this is Grandma and Grandpa Haas. Jesse and Francis were married in Hot Springs, South Dakota on September 2nd, 1927. Jesse passed away on November 8th, 1974, and Grandpa Francis passed away on January 31st, 1994. I wish we would have had this camera when Grandma was still alive, because she certainly enjoyed you grandkids, and so I want to make this just kind of a little history of Granddad for all you grandkids. '88, and we're looking at a good friend of mine, Francis Haas. He's on August 3rd of this year, he was 89 years old. And to look at him, you wouldn't think that he's had 2 heart bypasses. And then in February, he had a heart attack. And so we're happy to have him here to do some talking to us today. We're going to learn a little bit about his history. Okay, Curly, where did your Haas family originate?
Well, my dad's father was born in Germany, and he left Germany probably when he was 18 years old or something like that to avoid German draft, German military, and his wife came from Switzerland, and they were born, one in Germany, the father was in Switzerland, and the mother of the family was born in Switzerland, right. Anyway, they came over here. I don't remember the dates, but it was early in the Civil War, and he, when they got here, well, he got into the Northern Army of the Civil War. The Northerners, and fought to start on as a private, and then later on, I think, as a sergeant. He got a promotion on kind of something, and he and some others done when the flag was knocked down. They went in to set the flag back up. So he was, I think, a sergeant in the Army. But anyway, then they, after the Civil War, the family lived in Minnesota, close to Minneapolis and St. Paul, in that area, along the Mississippi River. So that was where they had 3 children. My father was the oldest, and then Charlie, and the third one was Will, and Minnie. I'm not sure whether she was the last or the next to the last one, but anyway, that was the 3 of his family, or 4 offspring in their family.
What was their names, Dad?
Huh?
What was their names?
Well, my dad was John, and he took the name M for Murphy, because he didn't have a middle name. And then the second one was Charlie. He lived in Sturgis, South Dakota, and Will lived in out in Big Timber, Montana, for the last part of their life anyway. And anyway, that's where they raised their families. And Minnie, the daughter, was raised in, I think they called it Mazeppa, but it was in Minnesota anyway, back close to Minneapolis, where they raised their family.
Okay, what happened to your granddad after the Civil War then?
Oh, he died. He died of dysentery from. He was sick when they discharged him. He died shortly after the Civil War, so it left the family all orphans, and the mother died too. Her name was Strickland. She married a man by the name of Strickland, and her name was Minnie Strickland. That was their family name. Anyway, she died when my dad was probably 12 years old. They were all orphaned then. So they were adopted out. They were farmed out or went to live with ranch people at different ranches. So they all lived at separate ranches and were separated, but lived in the same vicinity for a good many years.
Who did your dad spend some time with?
Well, when he left the Wrigley, the people that had him and raised him were Wrigleys. We don't know whether they was in relation to the chewing gum people or not. Some of us thought that they were, but anyway, it was a big ranch, and they were English people, Wrigleys, and he lived there until he was about 18 or 19. And then he went to a business college in Minneapolis and spent a year or so there. And while he was there, they had a gymnasium, and he was pulling broomsticks, and he ruptured himself, so that, and he never did in his whole life ever have that operated on or anything. He just lived with a truss all of his life, so he was always pretty miserable with that rupture, or whatever, a hernia. So that was, he had that to live with all of his life.
Where did the Wrigleys live, Dad?
Oh, close to Minneapolis there, on the lake. I guess it was what they call Lake City. Lake City was next to almost a lake that was formed by the Mississippi River backing up. It was an area where the Mississippi River backed up, and it was practically a lake. So they lived close to what they call Lake City, Minnesota.
Then your dad started teaching school there sometime, didn't he?
Well, after he left that business college, he got himself a single buggy and a single horse, and he found a farm handbook that you could sell for $4 or $5 or $6, which was quite a bit of money those days, and he traveled out through the countryside and sold those books, and he could probably sell 4 or 5 of those books a day, and lived at hotels, wherever he happened to land at that night, or stay at some farmhouse where they invited him to stay or something. So he traveled through the countryside. And then he took he passed the teacher's examination that they required those days. He only had probably a 4th or 5th grade education, 3rd or 4th grade maybe, but pretty small education. because they only had 6 months schooling. All the farm schools had 6 months schooling those days, but he had, but he managed, I guess, to get 5th or 6th grade possibly, and then he took the teacher's examination and passed that, so he was a country school teacher. He taught 13 terms of country school. But he taught after my mother and him was married, and she also taught a school up in close to Rapid City there, out by Cleghorn Springs. It was a Dark Canyon School where she taught. And anyway, then they taught out around, he taught some school in up around Aberdeen, and then he went over into North Dakota and taught at what they call Wapton, a town or an area, Wapton, and over not too far from Bismarck, which is the capital of North Dakota. So he taught several terms of school in North Dakota, and then went down. I guess he taught possibly the Murphy School there at Rapid City. I mean, the Rapid Valley, and that's where. And he was a ditch tender a summer or two while he. The Murphys had 2 ranches. I mean, they had 2 ditches. I mean, they were incorporated ditches. I mean, for irrigation purposes. And one of their ranches had what they called the Hawthorne ditch, and the other one was the Murphy ditch. So they, but he was ditch tender during the summer, and that's where he met Mary Murphy. I mean, that was his. The Murphys had. Let's see, Ike and Dave and Mary and Edna. Edna was the youngest, and Ike was the oldest, and Dave was the 3rd oldest, I think. My mother the 2nd oldest, I believe.
Where were they from, Dad, the Murphy?
Oh, well, the Murphys, the first I started hearing about where they were from was they had gone out to the gold rush in California, and they were sort of ranchers. They always drove a herd of cattle, and it was all open country between back east where they apparently came from and the gold rush in California. But they didn't stay too long in California. And then they headed out for the gold rush in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Oh.
Anyway, they drove a herd of about. They had wagons, I mean covered wagons and ox teams and probably 300 or 400 head of cattle and cowboys and tents and different things. So when they left from California, they'd make about 10 miles a day.
Wow.
And they always had to camp in open country because it was all open country between, I mean, unfenced and pretty much all open. And then they spent the last winter when my mother was 4 years old, they spent it just out of Denver at Longmont. And they herded their cattle there. And then the next summer in the spring when they took off for Rapid City, but it took them about 4 months to go 400 miles from Denver to Rapid Valley. It was where they homesteaded just out of Rapid City.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, did they have any trouble with Indians? There was no problem
Well,
with Indian uprising, no?
They didn't have any trouble, but that was shortly after the Custer massacre. It was in, when they got there, it was within less than 25 years of the Custer massacre. Anyway, it was the massacre out there was about 1876, and they were out there probably in 1881 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And Esther was born there after they'd settled there quite a few years. They'd been there. They'd homesteaded this ranch, and then most of the hired men that was with them homesteaded ranches, and then they'd bought all the homesteads at the hired men, and a lot of people were homesteading ranches, and they'd sell a ranch. 160 acres was a homesteaded ranch those days. They'd sell that for $100, so that the Murphys bought quite a lot of ground, and homesteaded ground, and so they had a pretty big operation going there when I was a child. I mean, Granddad Murphy died when he was 45, and Ike Murphy, the oldest one in the family, took over, and he was the manager and run the ranch for grandmother Murphy.
Now, when your dad and mother got married, he met her there at the ranch.
Yeah.
Well, when were they married, and where did they live first?
Well, I'm not sure of that. I think they must have lived with the Murphys for a very short time, but then they went out to where Dave homesteaded out at Dave Murphy, the third son. He went about 80 miles out where the Murphys always drove their cattle. They raised a lot of hay on the old Murphy ranch, and but in the spring, early spring, they'd drive maybe 400 or 500 head of cattle out to what they call Red Owl and White Owl area, out almost by the North Dakota border. It's 80 miles from Rapid City. They'd go out and ford the Belle Fourche River when they had to catch a time when the river was down enough so they could ford it and drive their cattle across the Belle Fourche River and on out. The Belle Fourche River is about 40 miles from Rapid City, so they had to take their tents and covered wagons and cowboys and everything out there, and they herded the cattle there all summer. Then Dave finally homesteaded out there, and he got a pretty big ranch out there after a while after he got married. But you asked me when my mother and dad were married, roughly, Esther was born in 1997, yeah.
1897?
Yeah, and I was born in 1990. 1899.
Yeah.
And they were pretty well established by then. The Murphy Ranch was a pretty big operation by then.
Mm-hmm.
But they lived there a while.
Well, I think they did, possibly, but then they moved to Sturgis. They taught a term of school. My dad and mother both taught a school out by White Owl one year, I think, and then they came back and settled in Sturgis.
Mm-hmm. How old were you then when they settled in Sturgis then?
Well, I The way I understand it, I was born in Sturgis.
Yeah, you were born in Sturgis,
Yeah.
right?
So, well.
But you remember living there? Do you remember?
Oh, well, we lived there 7 years because I went the first year of school to the Sturgis public. I mean, it was a big school. I mean, pretty good sized. We had our first grade. I mean, my first grade class was probably maybe 40 people or so. I mean, 40 children. Mm-hmm. And I think the teacher was named McClellan. I'm not sure. There was something like McClellan anyway. But anyway, but I did go to Sturgis School for 1 year, and then we moved. After that, and Granddad Murphy had died, and they decided to split the Murphy estate up and give some portion of it to each one of the Murphys. So my mother got 160 acres of ground on Box Elder Valley. That's about 6 miles out of Rapid City on Box Elder Creek. And the Murphys lived on Rapid Creek, one divide over. And anyway, then Ike lived there at the Murphy Ranch and managed it. And Ike's first wife, which is the mother of Marion, she died after she fell and hurt herself and never did recover and died from that injury. So that, but she died there at the, was living at the Murphy Ranch yet when she died. And Dave had already gone out north and had homesteaded out north. I mean, I guess they called it White Owl. Mm-hmm. Either White Owl or Red Owl. They were vicinities. I mean, little post offices close there to where Dave homesteaded anyway. And Marcus, that's right close to the North Dakota border anyway.
Could you tell us now, you said that Esther was probably born on the Murphy Ranch when your mom and dad were living on the Murphy Ranch, and you was born in Sturgis. Well, where were the rest of the children born in?
Well, all but Hazel, Hazel was born in Sturgis yet. She was 6 years old then, about. And she was born in Sturgis, and then all the rest of them was born, except Marie was born after we moved in 1913. I think she was born in Rapid City, but all of them was, all the rest of it, I mean, well, Ed and John were born out on the ranch.
On the ranch.
I think that's the way it was.
See, there was, Esther was the oldest?
Yeah. And I was second, and Hazel was third. She was born about 1906. John was born, Ed was born 1912. They was, they were born quite a distance apart. 1906 for Hazel and 1912 for Ed, 1913 for, 1911 for John, and 1913 for Marie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we wanted to ask you, what were your earliest memories? Now, you remember that you were born in Sturgis.
Well,
what were some of the things you remember?
Well, I can remember the folks, that was about the time that the automobiles started coming out. I remember the folks had a picture of an automobile on the, they built a nice house in Sturgis. Real, that old house that you've seen there, got a picture of. But anyway, they built that, and then my dad wanted to be a market gardener, so he they had enough ground there, and he had a big chicken house and a barn. They had a team of horses and a wagon, and I think he had a spring wagon and a lumber wagon, so he could haul heavy stuff, you know, with a lumber wagon, spring wagon. But he liked to, he'd raise these vegetables there, and they'd wash these, he had quite a, well, they had a fire there, and it burnt one team of horses for him in the barn, and all the chickens, they burnt the chicken house up. That was where the fire started, in a brooder, I guess, that they had there, is hatching chickens. Anyway, and they burnt the barn and chicken house, but anyway, then he rebuilt all that stuff and got going again. He had this market garden going all the time, so they'd bunch up radishes and onions and lettuce, and they sold eggs, and I think they had a cow in town too, there on the edge of town where they lived. I think they sold a little bit of butter, you know, and all that stuff, and anything to make a living, I guess. But he liked to pedal, so he'd go to Deadwood one day a week. They'd work way into the night bunching those radishes and washing and cleaning the radishes and bunch them up, and all the lettuce, and I mean whatever, onions, turnips or whatever they had, you know, that they sold. Get a whole load of stuff, and then he'd take it and pedal it around Deadwood one day a week, and then he'd go to Lead another day a week. Then he'd go down to Fort Meade and spend a day pedaling. So he was a peddler at heart, I'll tell you. Yeah, he was quite a peddler. But then he pedaled around Sturgis one day, I guess, so that he spent a lot of his time on the road, I mean, behind a team of horses, you know, and peddling stuff.
The Murphys wanted to make him a rancher, too.
Oh, well, that's what happened after he had this thing going in Sturgis real good, and then the Murphys gave my mother this ranch down there, 160 acres, and they also had some extra cattle, 4 or 5 or 6 cattle, or maybe 10, I don't know, and $1,000. And I guess they gave him some horses too, 2 or 3 or 4 horses. I mean, 2 teams, I guess, what they gave him of horses. One team of work horses and one kind of lighter traveling horses. They had 6 horses, so that they had 1 heavy team and 2 lighter teams, 1 medium-sized team and 1 light team, which they used. I forget the name. One of the lighter ones. The 2 lighter ones were black, and Nellie was one of them, but I forget the name of the other one. But anyway, they had names, all of them. But so we moved down to the ranch. My dad didn't want to, but he did. He moved down there, but he never built a decent house, or we never had a decent house to live in from then on, ever. I mean, we always lived in shacks. He built a chicken house to start on. We lived in that. He built a great big chicken house. We lived in that. Then he built that up on posts, and it was up about 4 feet above ground. Or no, I mean it's about 2.5 feet above ground. That one was. And then he moved over and he built a shop. Oh, you want me to go ahead? He built a shop, and that's where he dug there was a railroad graded from Pier to Rapid City, all graded, but they was graded through our ranch, and but they never put the bridge or the rails in. So he went in the bank of the downstream side of this high railroad grade that went in where the bridge abutments was going to be, and he dug into the bank there, and he dug and he put plank floor in, a plank retaining wall against the dirt there, so that this building that he built was built into the railroad grade, and he dug into the bank enough so that the roof went right up from where the rails would have been, to the peak, so you could walk around on the railroad grade and walk around from the back and walk right up onto the top of the house. So when that flood hit, that's all that saved us, was the fact that house was built into that railroad grade in such a way that the folks heard this terrible roar. It was a cloudburst, and about abreast of about 4 feet of water come down through there, covered the whole ranch. In just a matter of a few minutes, I think, because it came about a 4-foot wall of water from up around what they call Sage Barn Canyon, up around Piedmont, is where the cloudburst was, and it washed the railroad track all out up there and everything, tore it all up. But anyway, that was an awful bad flood.
What year was that, Dad? What year was that?
1907. Must have been 1907, yeah. Anyway, an accident twice. I think the second, the first accident I'd taken I was cutting flues out of our railroad boiler. We had to take about 200 flues out of a boiler. The Interstate Commerce made us take the flues all out every 5 years and replace the flues. Anyway, so I need to cut them out with a cutting torch, and so we had an old cutting torch there, and it had the big bulky cutting tip on it, and in order to reach in these flues, I had to reach in each flue and cut from the inside out. So I had this, I took that cutting torch and took the old head off and made a new cutting head. Then I used the same tip and bent it so it'd be at right angles and real small, so I'd get inside of this 2-inch flue and cut the flue out. Anyway, in the process of silver soldering the whole thing together, I got a leak in there, and the leak, the oxygen and the acetylene leaked in together, and when I lit it, it blew up. It blew that flashback chamber, which is the flashback chamber was a little tank about 2 feet long and 6 inches in diameter and half full of water. The acetylene gas would filter through the water. It was supposed to be for just that purpose. It would avoid, rather than have the oxygen leak back into the big tank, we'd do this thing in the small tank. But anyway, it blew up, and I was standing right alongside of it when it blew up. I was real close. Nothing hit me. There was pipes and valves and gauges, and the tank itself flew all around there, but I got missed.
Did it bother your hearing any?
Well, for about a day I couldn't hear anything. I don't think much. Then, then we had the blacksmith shop in there, and we always had a blacksmith helper. He was a big, rough Dane that he was either singing. He could sing real good, and he could cuss about as good. If he wasn't singing, he was cussing probably. So, but one day he came to me and asked me if I'd teach him how to weld. So I told him, I said, yeah, I'll try to. So he was around there. I was running a lathe in that little partition between him and me, and the lathe was on one side of the partition, the welding table on the other side. But anyway, I heard him cussing in there. He'd quite a volley of oaths would come out, and I'd dash around there to see what was the matter, and about the time I got there, the darn thing blew up again on me. But he'd dip the welding tip into the molten metal and plug the tip. And then he grabbed he let it run a while, and the oxygen pressure was higher than the acetylene pressure, so that it forced the oxygen back into the acetylene. About the time I got there, well, he'd gotten another tip and lit it, and that's when the explosion happened. But I was lucky to get out of those two, I'll tell you.
I'll bet you was.
He was standing right alongside of me. We both standing there when that second one blew up.
You had quite a session during World War II when they asked you to do some instruction. Could you just tell us a little bit about that, and we'll call it quits here?
Well, anyway, World War II, this is when this started. America hadn't really got into World War II yet, but I guess the government foreseen the need of teaching machinists, so they was making arrangements at the Rapid City High School to use the manual training room and set up a machine shop in there for instruction for machinists. So they came to me, a fellow by the name of Goschak and the manual training teacher came down to the mill one day and wanted to know if I'd come up and teach a night school for him, 4 hours a night, 2 nights a week. And I told him I guess it'd be all right, but I had to make arrangements with the company to do it. So I went and got permission to, because I was on salary at the mill. So I got permission to do that. Anyway, that run on, and we just gotten this school started. We got 6 little South Bend lathes, the new ones, and some old machine shop machinery. We got part of it from Deadwood and bought it here and there, the used machinery. But anyway, we got enough to set up enough machinery to teach 10 people. So anyway, we started the thing up, and it went along about a month or two, and all of a sudden Pearl Harbor happened. And when Pearl Harbor hit, why, they said, well, you're stuck for 6 nights a week and 6 hours a night, 6 nights a week. So, and then they wanted me to come up there 2 hours to make it 42 hours on Sunday. So, but I never did. I never went up there on Sunday. But we taught the thing 6 nights a week, 6 hours a night. So I had 10 students, 10 weeks, and then I get 10 more. They were mostly all people 45, 50 years old that we got, but I did have younger ones, some younger ones. I had a few women, but I taught that thing 2.5 years, and it turned out that after we started it, I took the 6 till midnight. shift. And then there was another guy from the homestake that came at midnight and stayed till 6 o'clock in the morning, another 10 students. And then another one come at 6 o'clock in the morning and stayed till noon, another one at noon stayed till I came on, so it went right around the clock. Then over in the grade school there, they set up a welding class. I mean, but they never run that, only one shift, welding class. But Jessie went up and took welding up there also for quite a while. I mean, for 10 weeks, I think she took welding. She got so she could run a beautiful bead of the acetylene. They didn't do any arc welding, it was just all acetylene welding that they done at that school. That was that.
Well, this was August 4th, 1989. We were commemorating Francis's 90th birthday. And Sandy put up this family tree for us. And she made quite a likeness, I think, of Granddad. And it shows the whole family tree there. You see Francis and his nickname Curly Haas, and it depicts his 90 years of life. And then, of course, it shows the family tree. Francis and Jessie had 2 children, Betty and Dawn, and they had Sandy, Wayne, and Karen, or Betty did, and Sandy had Paul, Ben, and John, and Cassie and Carrie. That is, Wayne did, and then Karen, of course. And then there was Dawn had Susan, Dan, and Tim, and their family was Jennifer, Melissa, and Matthew, that were Susan's children, and Eric and Kyle, that were Dan's. And then, of course, Tim's children were, I got his name right here. There was Donnie and Paul and Keith. And so they are all depicted here on the family tree. And so we want to thank Sandy for making this up for us. It's a picture of Granddad's 90th birthday cake. And when the crowd gets here, we'll all partake of it. Oh.
There we go.
90 years young yesterday, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay, there's the cake and the family tree. We've already...
I stuck around quite a while so far.
Have you noticed that family tree there, Curly? There's
no, I hadn't noticed.
There's Betty and Dawn and all the grandkids there.
I'll be darned. That's supposed to be a picture of me.
Yeah, that's a picture of you right there.
I'll be darned.
That's pretty neat, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Sandy came up with that idea.
Yeah, well, I'll be darned. Yeah, the family tree. Well, a bunch of...
Picture of all the decorations that Mom and Sandy went through for Granddad's 90th birthday. things readied for the big party in the family tree. Well, Mary, if you'd have known that he was going to be a 90-year-old granddad, you wouldn't have married him, wouldn't you?
Years don't bother me.
Yeah.
No, I'm wondering about Sullivan.
Do you have older sisters or brothers?
Well, they're about second or third cousins. It's up here. Their grandpa.
Washington, did you say? Well, where are they stationed right now?
No, they're
Well, I mean, here and there.
yeah,
Big jamboree.
Well, I mean, where are they stationed for service? Last I heard they were in Florida.
Pretty country up there. Do they like it?
in the office. We have some.
Do you? Been a bad year for them.
Well, I don't think it's bad or good. They get my father.
Hey, Ralph, turn around.
Back up a little bit.
How you doing? Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. Thank you.
Just 2 more feet.
That's Sanders.
Stand on the dashboard and go back.
What's that?
That's Sanders.
This one here is mine. Boy. The light blue.
Cassie.
Floyd and Judy and Barry Bronson. And a thief. I got a picture of that, Marie. Just want to get a picture of the spread here before it's all gone. A lot of Hey, Floyd. Thank you. You're a gentleman.
You heard him say it, folks. Shopping and minding my own business. And there they were.
Okay, there's the guest of honor and Mary. Some of their close friends.
The family tree over there. The one up on the wall. The picture of Curly. I said, yeah, that looks like him.
It seems like forever, doesn't it?
Please. Okay, I got Diane there. Boy, I got everybody there now.
Stuffing our face.
Sure, huh?
I'll be making a mess.
This is Brooks and Nadine's little girl.
Yeah, yeah.
Flower out of your way. There's a plate there at the end. You can just fill it up with whatever you like.
Hi.
Go get something to eat.
Yeah.
Where's the camera away? You don't get Karen.
Dan and his wife. And
Yeah.
No, just one. Take one.
He already took one.
Ben, why don't you get a picture of your mom or, you know. I took a picture of the big group already. Or go get, oh, I know.
Pumpkin? Gary, I took one while your dad was
Gene just moved. They just moved in Arizona now. They sold their house there last day. He recovered. Yeah, I had job.
Ralph.
there's Rita. Sharon. Les and Susie.
Oh, yeah. It was great. Oh, yeah. Well, those are good things.
Well, you know how it goes, Derby. Don't pick on him like that guy. His things don't like him.
Judy and her son Dan. And, came in just a minute ago, so I want to get her picture. Deanne and Virginia and Harold and Mary just came in, so I want to get their picture. I'm trying to get married. The Methodist pastor and his new wife came in shortly.
Pull tab. Oh, does she go to big? Yeah. She loves it. I can never get a hold of her.
Betty was right. We had just about 60 people here. Nice turnout for Francis' birthday. We're going here.
Hi, Eric.
How you doing?
Fine. How'd you get a picture of the picture man?
All right. I got to get a picture of Granddad up there. Well, this is Francis's 94th birthday. Hey, Tim. There's the two birthday guys, Granddad and Tim. How old are you now, Tim?
26.
20 and plus?
34.
34, okay. Thank you. Okay, so we got quite a turnout tonight for Tim and Granddad Haas.
Hey, Tim, show me punching it. Whoever shot that in is going to get killed. They're not going to here. Let's shot that.
Well, they're loading up the the table with food. Paul's sneaking his share. Lloyd and George, Kim. Well, Dan and his wife and boys are here. Looks like Tim's had some pretty good meals. Granddad, he's doing all right too, isn't he? Yeah, doing all right. Well, they're all milling around, getting something to eat here. There's Paul. He's getting his share again. It's all right. Carrie, how you doing? Getting something to eat, John? Something to eat, huh? Old Dan, he's taking some pictures. Barry and his wife, Marie. Lloyd's boy, Mike. Kelly? Hey, Kelly. Say hi. Okay. Kim's wife and one of her boys. One of their boys.
There's your juice right there. I watched this one
Sorry, I was trying to get the walk.
Jump out far enough. They're like some kids.
Oh yeah, I like that. If I try that, I probably won't get around. I'll land on my face. I'll hurt myself. They got a good diving board. It takes you so long to get all the way around. Oh, yeah.
He's looking at his goodies now. You got cards, presents.
but he was way young. He was like 25. So they went there one day. Oh, sorry, buddy. Yeah, you're ready to duck.
I looked for any bulges on him. I walked around and looked at it.
Having a hard time reading that one, I guess. Oh, there you got it read. Okay.
You said wherever one of the guys next, he does
There you got a ribbon on his head. Yeah, it looks cute. I got it. Dan telling a fish story.
Yeah, sitting them suckers in your pillow.
He brought that to work one day.
Yeah, and he's thinking it.
Old Tim, he got some stuff here too, some cards. Yeah, okay.
Get out. I'm gonna take your pick.
This is says happy birthday wishes to Francis and Tim. Okay, this is August 3rd, 1993.
Talk to Greg. Greg's one of my best buddies.
Okay, thanks. Busy getting the food ready. Getting ready to cut the cake. Well, Paul, now, is this set up like Misty's? Is that what you're saying?
This is how banquets is set. We set Red Lion banquets up like yesterday.
Okay. Well, this, he's got all the napkins all fixed up.
What's that? Have you been skiing at Shasta?
This is our Christmas Eve get-together, and old Paul, he's working up at Red Lion now, and he's really knowing how to set a table. That makes his mother pretty happy, because she can appreciate all the help that he can give her. Well, that's really fancy, isn't it? View of it. All the food, salads, all the napkins fixed up, and all the silverware all laid out. Boy, everything is really nice. Really nice.
I just hope Sally just didn't go slow.
Oh, so far it hadn't blown up. I guess it's going to be all right.
She's done it before.
Yeah. Can you smile a little bit? A little bit.
Supposed to get down.
We usually had a time of, we read the scriptures concerning the Christmas story, And Granddad always loved to enter in on that. And then some of the kids were learning to play the guitar and the piano, and every once in a while we'd have them play some music. But we always had a devotion at Christmas time, and Granddad always liked to enter in. Very good. Well, we just wanted to show the table setting. Paul is the table setter now since he's working up at Red Lion Restaurant. He knows how to make all these fancy napkins. That's called the Bird of Paradise. And so we got, so there are going to be 9 of us today, 8 sitting at the table, and Paul's got one set for John over there. So there'll be 9 of us with Wayne and Janny and Cassie Carey up in Weaverville. This is on Christmas Day, 1993. To show the table after Paul had it all fixed up so nice.
Thank you, Dorothy.
There's Karen. How you doing, Karen?
Getting full.
Did you eat that napkin Paul fixed up for you, that Bird of Paradise?
Oh, we kind of ruined them, though.
You kind of ruined them, huh? Okay. How you doing there, Granddad? Is that pretty good food?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, it's real good.
Okay, good.
I'm having trouble getting outside of all of it.
Of course, John, he's over there all by himself. You got a table all by himself, haven't you, John? Well, this was the last Christmas that Granddad would spend with us. We enjoyed his fellowship. He felt a lot better on this Christmas Day than he did on Christmas Eve, so we were happy to have his fellowship. I hope this will just be a good memory for all of you grandkids of what Granddad was like.